Good morning and welcome to Sing Elite Golf Performance Centre. Unfortunately, I can't be with you this morning as I had to go away to Singapore for the weekend. But we thought we would shoot you a quick video just to introduce the sessions as we've been doing each time, and then Pro Day and one of our other coaches will be able to go through the practical with you from there. For those of you who may not have been and this is your first time, my name's Andrew Knott and I'm the Director of Coaching here at Sing Elite Golf Performance Centre. Generally, I would take you and run you through the sessions. For today, what we were looking to do was talk about hazard play and general recovery play from other situations. The trouble with this is this could be an endless amount of situations. So what we've tried to do is we've decided to split this into two areas for you. The first area being hazards as in bunkers. The second area is being recovery from trouble. So if you've hit it in the trees or you've got yourself out of position, and how do you go through it? Technically, the third area of hazards that we would have in golf would be in the water, hitting the ball into a water hazard. But there's not really any recovery from there, because if you hit the ball in the water hazard, you're just simply going to take a penalty drop and be able to play from there. There is the part of knowing the rules of where you would need to drop the ball, but we won't go into that today. What we can do is, if that's a question mark, Tay will be able to answer some of those questions for you, or you can message me with any questions you've got about being in a water hazard. So as always, first of all, we're going to try and break this down into several different areas for you in terms of what we can do for playing out of hazards and recovering from trouble. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put up on the board the four areas that we looked at before. The first one we're going to look at is equipment, as always. We will then have technique. We have our imagination or our intention. This is going to be very important, as always. And finally, we have our physical. So let's look at these four areas. The first one I'm going to go through is through the bunkers, and then I'll go for trouble play. When we talk about equipment, this is going to follow on for those of you who were here from last week with the chipping in terms of the bounce of the club. The bounce of the club is very, very important with the bunker play, and it's really where bounce originated from as a design for a club. The key area of what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the ball or the club skid through the sand underneath the ball and make the ball come out on an explosion of sand when we're playing out of a bunker. The problem we have is that the sand type will depend on how we're going to use that, how we're going to hit that. So bounce is our key element when we look at bunker play for equipment. And that will determine the technique of what technique you're going to use. If I can just draw a diagram very quickly for you. If this is the golf ball sitting on the sand here, our job of what we're trying to do is go into the sand, take a small slide, and then come out of the sand. This will explode the sand up. Now here's the problem. If I'm in a bunker that's got loads of soft powdery sand, and I don't know how to use the bounce correctly, what will happen is the club will just go in too deep, come out, and the ball will just puff in front of you. The reverse happens. If I'm in a bunker and the sand is wet and hard, the club will come in, hit the sand, it won't go in, it will bounce up, and it will hit the ball. So we need to know how to use the bounce and how to adjust the bounce depending on what kind of bunker we've got. Generally, as you'll remember from last week, if we open the club up more, what we do is we increase the bounce. If we close the club face down or keep it square, we reduce the bounce. Therefore, if you're in the soft powdery sand, you need more bounce to get this skidding situation. If you're in wet, hard sand, you need less bounce so the club can dig and go underneath the ball to make it pop up on the explosion of sand. But the real key element for a bunker shot is that you are not trying to hit the ball. you are trying to explode the sand around the ball and then allow the ball to come out on that explosion of sand. So that leads us to technique, and really technique and equipment, they merge together in this situation, because the way that you play will determine what kind of bounce you want. Now, if you're confident to open the club up and increase the bounce by doing that, then you can have a sand wedge that's only probably got 8 or 10 degrees of bounce on it, because you can make the difference. However, if you're not confident of playing out of a bunker by opening the club face and increasing the bounce, then you need a club that's got more bounce with a wider sole on it that makes that happen for you without needing to do that. So your technique will really be driven by how confident you are in playing and what club you want to use in order to play that with. Just as a further on this, hopefully you can see that if your ball is in a plug lie in the bunker, you need to play this as if it was wet sand. You'll need to get the club to dig into the sand a little, because it needs to get underneath the level of the ball. What most people do when they get a plug lie is they open their club to try and increase the loft to get the ball up and out. The problem with doing that is that you increase the bounce and then the club will not go under the ball, and therefore the ball won't come out. I will talk a little bit more about the technique of playing out of plug lies when we come to the physical. So that's the really important part of the equipment, is understanding the bounce and the technique of the way that you're going to do this. So technique is linked to equipment. Okay, so when we come to the intention, this is really important for bunker play. The reason for that is because most people, when they get in the bunker, they just paralyzed by fear of what can happen. Dumping it and just leaving the ball in front of you, hitting the ball too clean and sculling it over the green. These are negative intentions. If you can get the intention, the imagination, all you're going to do is just puff the ball out, just explode the sand and let it come out onto the green. It's going to be a lot easier to play the shot. And of course, Tay and our other coach will take you through this and show you the best way for you to do that and to get that explosion. That's what's going to be really important. For the physical element of this shot, well, as a general shot, there's not a massive amount of physique that's required outside of your normal golf swing. We do want to be able to generate a reasonably full swing. Coming back to the technique on that, we do want to generate a reasonably full swing because we need to get enough power to be moving the sand out. It's not the same as a chip shot. But there's no real physical to that. The only area where there's real physical, where we need power and strong wrists, is when we're in a plug lie. Because if you've got a plug lie, especially if it's deep, very, very deep in there, you will need to be very strong in your wrists to hold the club when you're hitting against that hard sand. If you've got weak wrists and we don't have a lot of power, you're always going to struggle to get out of a plug lie, no matter what equipment or what technique and even what intention that you use. So in general, physical's not a major thing for the bunker shot, but it will help to have strong wrists. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to help to show you how to do those things outside for the bunker shot. So now let me move on to the recovery from trouble. Well, generally speaking, the recovery from trouble here in Thailand is when you hit it out offline and you're in the trees. And the key things that you have to learn and be able to do, or the key thing you have to do, is control the trajectory of the ball. The trajectory of the ball will be the most important. The reason is, and we're going to start with intention here. If I draw you a bunch of trees here, please excuse my art, that's not my skill. But if I draw this bunch of trees here, realistically speaking, when we've hit it in the trees, the two options we have are to go low underneath the branches or over the top of the trees. Now, if you're in the middle of the trees, going over the top is not a realistic option. So more often than not, it's about trying to keep the ball low. Far too often when I see amateurs playing out of trees and trouble spots, they hit the ball too high and it hits the branches. Now there's an old saying in golf that trees are 90% air. Well, that's not completely true. Trees are 90% air if you keep the ball below the branches. Once you get the ball up into the branch and leaf height, then they're no longer 90% air and you have to be very lucky to get the ball to go through. But if you can keep the ball below the branch and leaf height, then you're going to be unlucky to hit the trunk of the tree. Of course, if there's lots of trunks, it becomes harder to do and you need to make sure you chip out sideways and take a safer option. But the real key to this is keeping the ball down low beneath the branches. So when it comes to your equipment, it becomes about club choice and controlling trajectory. You have to learn how the launch angle will come off of each individual club depending on how much power you put in that golf swing. So that's really what our coaches need to take you through with today, is how to control the launch angle of the ball and the trajectory of the golf ball. Now, two things will determine that. The first one is loft. The second one is power. Okay? Now, if we take the loft of a 7-iron, maybe around about 35 degrees, it's going to get the ball coming out at a certain trajectory. The more power, though, that you add into it, even when you keep the loft the same, the higher the trajectory. So if you're trying to chip a ball out, maybe 50 or 60 yards, the 7-iron might be appropriate. It may even be a 9-iron. But if you've got the option to try and move it 100 yards down the fairway, then you need less loft. Because as you hit more power into the ball, that energy that you put into the ball is transferred both in forward energy, but also upward energy. Okay? So the more power, less power, more power. The same loft will create a different trajectory dependent on the amount of power. Now, we can't tell you exactly what club and what trajectory will come out. That is down for you to practice, to learn and to experiment with. But again, our coaches will take you through that. The other thing that you have to consider here is also the lie of the golf ball. If you're in deep grass, you will need more loft just to get the ball up and moving forward to start with. If you're not in deep grass and it's sitting up nicely, less loft will work. I would always recommend, though, that you take the safest option. If you've got into trouble, make sure you get yourself back into play. Don't take on high risky shots. However, the better you get at doing this and the more you understand and can control your trajectory, the higher risk you can take, the more adventurous you can be with this golf shot. In terms of technique, well, that comes down to controlling the length of swing for power and being able to control the loft of the club to get the trajectory correct. Intention is the most important part here. If we look at the intention of this, the greatest recovery players that we've seen, Seve Ballesteros was the greatest. And if you ever get a chance to watch any videos of Seve, you'll see this amazing imagination that's at work all the time. Picturing and seeing and being able to hit it. We've got a player who's like that very close to home, who I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time working with, which is Tamanun Siraj. Tamanun's won 5 times on the Asian Tour and is one of the legends of the Thai golf game. Tamanun is a master at imagining and playing out of trouble. In fact, more often than not, Tamanun can hit better shots out of trouble than he can from the middle of the fairway. Simply because when he's in trouble, it activates his imagination to understand what he can do with the ball, working the trajectory and the curvature of the golf ball. A modern day player who's really good at this is Bubba Watson. Bubba Watson's got a great imagination for working the ball, And I don't know if you remember 4 or 5 years ago when he won his first Masters, he won it in a playoff, playing an amazing wedge shot from out of the trees on the 10th, when he must have hooked the ball 50, 60 yards to get it back online, and ended up making a par, which was good enough to win the playoff. The physicality of this, again, it's not too big. The only thing is, if you're in deep grass and you have to get it out, you will need those strong wrists again to be able to move the ball forwards. My main advice to finish on this is that you want to make sure that you are playing the shot to get you back into play. If you've hit it in the trees and in trouble, make sure that you take your medicine and you get it out. If you've hit it in a bunker, let's not be greedy. Okay, the level that the pros play on and the bunkers they play out of, it's a much different thing for what you get to do. Let's get it out the bunker and on the green and make it from there. Okay, so to round up, what you're going to do today with Tay and our other coaches, we're going to split you into 2 groups. One's going to take you out to the bunker, the other is going to take you in and around the trees and on the mats here and learn to control your trajectory. What we'll do is you'll get about 45 minutes in the bunker and about 45 minutes in the trees, and we'll switch over with each coach just doing each session. So I hope yet again you have a great morning. I hope you enjoyed the video that we've put together for you to get you started, and I hope to see you again soon when we run some more sessions.